episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 120, and we are the Who Dat Jedi Council. I'm Aaron. As with me as always is Fredo and Dave. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
We were talking. We do need to start recording those off-air conversations just for fun sometime. Oh, you're gonna have to pardon me. My wife is gone, so the dogs are running free. So you might hear bones dropping, dogs barking, clickety clacky going on the floor. You know, it's just what it is. So, but no, we were talking. Still talking Galaxy's Edge stuff. I've got a lead on the Skywalker lightsaber, so I'm really excited. Pays to know people. But and also was showing off that I kept my Diet Coke thermal detonator. So that was kind of cool.
Just got probably gone up in price because remember they're like $350 thereabouts when they debuted at Galaxy's
They
Edge.
were $350 then they've gone up in price.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Actually, I remember them being like at the start, but
it's okay. It's one of those things where it's like you get one just because. And we did try blue and green milk, and I liked blue milk, and Britt liked green milk, and I didn't like green milk, and she didn't like blue milk, so it worked out for us. So I don't think we mentioned that last week. So tonight,
how expensive was the blue milk?
Because I don't know.
I think it was like $4 or something like that.
We got the alcohol version, so it was more than which I think that was. I don't get the alcohol version because at Disney there ain't a lot of alcohol in their alcoholic drinks. So, just saying. But oh, crud! I forgot what I was going to say. So, So no, tonight we're going to be talking about the episode 3 of Kenobi, and Dave put out on Twitter kind of a poll of when we do talk about these episodes, do you all want us to be playing the episode along, kind of doing a watch party type of a thing? And apparently the answer was yes. So if you want to get up Disney Plus and skip the recap and then also skip the intro, and that's where, so it's like when the Obi-Wan title is fading in from the sands, that's where we'll be starting. But we're going to talk about, episode 3 tonight, which was kind of an exciting episode. My sister just started. She actually texted me a couple days ago. She said, should I start watching Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi? Which would I like better? And I was like, you need to watch Kenobi. Because she was kind of a passive Star Wars fan. And so she was like, the comments that she has made is really kind of funny. She keeps texting me as she's watching the episodes. So let's see here. Okay, so said Tatooine doesn't look like a very nice place to live. My reply, did it ever? Said true. And she said Leia's life was much more cushy. I said, well, she was a princess. Oh, good point. I like little Leia. I said, yeah, that girl is awesome. So, and she said she actually likes the character. Didn't just like the actor, liked the character. And then she replied back, said, why do I get so stressed out? I know Ben lives to be an old man. And then she was watching episode 3 today, and she said, the place Ben went to find Leia is worse than Tatooine. Then the next one is, holy McClunky, Darth Vader. And then she replied, I didn't like part 3. So that was, she did like it. It was just really stressful. She's finding it it is pretty intense. So before we start watching the episode, I guess, just what were your overall, because spoiler alert, everybody, Darth Vader's on the screen. So, how'd you feel about the progression of 1, 2, and 3 so far?
I thought it worked pretty well. 2 felt like kind of a necessary evil. A lot of those kinds of tropes that you would sort of expect to popped up, and it was kind of the connective tissue between episode 1, which was the intro of the character, which I liked a lot, and episode 3, where everything kind of goes to McClunky. So, as far as like a narrative arc so far, I like what we've seen. I think it works. And this episode was fraught with peril.
Yeah.
It was far too perilous. No, let's go back there and face the peril. No, actually, yeah, I agree with everything Dave said. I think so far it's flowed really well as an overall story. You could see kind of where this could have been a movie, where originally maybe it started as a movie, and then they've given the fact that Disney Plus gives them more time, they've allowed themselves to flesh out characters, events, situations. So but it hasn't lost any of its thematic drive yet for me. I think it's, if anything, episode three, which I didn't see coming, was absolutely what we needed to see.
The other conversation my sister and I had, because I called her and she said she didn't really like. She said, "Man, what'd you say? Obi-Wan just kind of given up. Just he's really." She was making some like judgment of like he's basically kind of, pardon me, it as a Jedi or something like that. And I was like, well, so there's a lot of common things here. Is like he's, first of all, he's defeated. He's really disillusioned. But then also, I think there's an intentional, turning himself off from the Force, like what Luke did in The Last Jedi. And I've often okay, we'll hit play here in a second, but I've wondered if they in the Kenobi episodes, are we validating The Last Jedi a little bit? And was that intentional on their part? I said it last week. I said, where were all the people who were upset about Luke? Because Ben's in the same place. He shut himself off from the Force because the minute he starts doing Force stuff, then the Inquisitors will find him.
If you buy that theory that Aaron just put out and you really like The Last Jedi, you should definitely go back and listen to our episode of the 100 best characters list, because it was heavy on Last Jedi love, and we had some thoughts on that. It was an entertaining episode, so minor plug there.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And just kind of go off what you're saying, Aaron, just right quick. I mean, I mean, this is a story of a man who has lost his faith, and the juxtaposition between the Obi-Wan that we saw in episode three, confident, assured of who he was in his place in the galaxy and his understanding of things. And he literally saw, well, not literally, but he saw his entire galaxy crumble, the world around him crumble and shift. And what does that do to anybody? I mean, it's understandable. It's the reason why Luke's journey also made sense. If everything you worked so hard for falls apart, you're not just going to be like, well, oh well, I'll keep going with the way I've been living my life. It's going to have major impact on a character, and
Right.
it has on Obi-Wan.
All right, so we've skipped the intro. We've skipped the recap. Let's go ahead and hit play on the count of three. And 1, 2, 3. And by the way, you notice that the last eye in Kenobi is a lightsaber. That's kind of fun. Fun little Easter
It's
egg
interesting
there.
that a lot of people started making connections with the posters, the character posters in the promotional material, and how the eye reflects who they're targeting.
Or focused on. Maybe not targeting,
Exactly.
but focused on.
Yeah, yeah.
And we start off with Obi-Wan still trying to connect with Qui-Gon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a line later we'll talk to. It's the line that somebody writes on the wall that says, "Only when your eyes are closed will you see the way." Basically, he's saying, I think Obi-Wan has not been doing. He's out of shape. He's out of Jedi shape, and so he can't connect with Qui-Gon at this point because he has to be. Especially you go to that episode of the Clone Wars where Yoda is learning what he needs to do. He needs to face his hubris, needs to, let go of, face himself, needs to let go of a lot of things. So, yeah.
Well,
So,
but it goes to that sense of identity that he's lost. I mean, being a Jedi wasn't just a job. In so many ways, it was similar in nature to being a priest or a soldier. Somebody who's can't just take that off. You don't take that as a 9 to 5. It's a calling. It's a way of life. And he didn't just lose his place. He lost his faith and his belief And not only that, on top of it all, he feels guilty for it all happening because the guy who made it all happen is the guy who's not coming for him.
How about Vader being put together here, guys?
Oh,
How'd you dig
love
it?
it.
Nice callback, and again, it's the promise of something more here. They would not just put that suit together um, if he wasn't going to make an appearance later on, and and uh, and they paid that off in spades.
So we're actually seeing Mustafar, and it's like they took this shot directly out of Rogue One of
Mm-hmm.
Vader's castle. And oh my goodness, the voice. The voice was incredible. It's James Earl Jones, but then there's also some special effects house that's how they got Mark Hamill sounding like, 25-year-old Mark Hamill, using some AI to tweak things to make it sound. But oh my goodness, did this sound good?
Mm-hmm. Well, the moment he started speaking, you just went, "Yep, that's Darth Vader," which is the key. It's not just. I love, we'll talk about Hayden's physical performance, which I think nails a lot of what the character, the way he behaves physically. But that connection to James Earl Jones's voice is just, it's mandatory. The character's half as good without him.
So we
By the way,
get.
do you
Oh, go ahead, Fredo.
I was just gonna say, did you find it interesting that he, in the first sentence, Vader tells Riva that the Grand Inquisitor means nothing, and then the next sentence he's offering the job to her.
Yeah, they don't really. And here's the thing, also, is that they don't say that he's dead. I mean,
Exactly.
but there's a line from Rebels right before the Grand Inquisitor actually does die. He says there are some things that are far more frightening than death. And then so I think that might be paid off in this series. But now Leia's asking Ben about the Force, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And later, we'll get into some more of this later on when she's asking about her lineage and things of this nature. But she's just very. This is a journey for her too. Um, and you see it in the very first episode where she's very hyper aware that she is an orphan, in that she's adopted. She doesn't understand her true place. She feels like a fish out of water with all the political responsibilities that she's under. Um, and so there's a lot of the whole hero's journey being undergone on her part here as well.
Well, it's also kind of funny that in all this time, Ben Obi-Wan, whatever we're going to call him, he's been wanting and anticipating training Luke, and now he's got Leia basically asking for the training, and he's very reluctant. I mean, he gets kind of, snippy, and then has to stop himself and, actually, calm himself down and be nice about it. But she's actually wanting to be trained. I mean, she's not asking make me a Jedi, but she's asking all these questions that he would be giving to Luke. So there might
Yeah,
be a.
because with Luke, yeah, because just think to, I'm sorry, yeah, in episode 4, he just flat out tells everything to Luke, except for the big moment, bit of news. But yeah, I think also in part it's part of the, much in the same way as Rey in episode 7 had wrapped her identity around her parents coming back to Jakku. Obi-Wan here has wrapped himself around the idea of protecting and eventually training Luke. I don't necessarily know that he ever thought to himself that he would be training Leia or be around Leia. I think he just handed it off to Bale and thought, okay, she'll be safe, and if something happens, she'll be there. But I think he always put himself in the position that if anybody was going to do anything about this, it would be him, with Luke doing it.
And I
I
love.
can
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love how Obi-Wan is impatient as well. She's saying, "Why would he lie to us?" And it's like, "People aren't all good, Leia." It's like, you know, why is my name Pinto? Puz. Why not? It's like, um, So I like how he's flawed. I like how he's, again, he's like a teacher who has been out of the school for, a decade, and he's going back in, and all those things that had become intuitive, he's got to relearn. Sorry, Dave, I stepped on you.
No, he's walking a little unsuredly there. His gait isn't particularly sure-footed or strong. Um, Little things about the performance just sort of belie this lack of confidence. He's unsteady at this point. Um,
Well, especially
I'm-
to that point, compare it to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Rebels, who is very assured of himself,
mhm.
very confident, and strong in the Force. So something big's gonna happen. I mean, some big transition happens between now and 5 years from now.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when Ewan's been interviewed about that stuff, and some of that, he's hinted that there might be another season of this show, and we may or may not see that. But I think in sort of underlying the surface of a comment like that, he doesn't necessarily think the character has completed that transition. So um, I do think like by the end of this series, we'll still have a lot of questions, and that's usually how Star Wars works. Is like I have questions now. What's going to happen? How did this thing occur?
By the
And
way,
yet,
in the Inquisitor's meeting room here, if you look along the shelf that goes around the perimeter of the room, those are all lightsabers and youngling helmets. So all treasures um, of who they've gotten. It's kind of creepy.
Mhm.
How do you like the Inquisitors so far? At least how they're being brought to real life. Are we cool with them?
Yeah, I like them. They connect much with the characters as we saw them, both in Rebels as well as in Jedi Fallen Order. They're servants, they're tools of Vader and Sidious. And the fact that they're all snippy at each other or snippy at each other, or that they're not necessarily all on the same page, makes sense. That's the way that the dark side works.
Well, you
And
said last week that, I mean, it's obvious, and right here, the
mm,
whatever brother is, saying, you talk to Vader, and she's like, unless you want me to follow your orders. So they're in competition with one another. They're not a
mhm.
cohesive team.
If anything, that's one of the elements that the Grand Inquisitor did kind of bring, which is why it's interesting that he's not around at this moment because it only highlights the disparity between them. They're not the Jedi Order, put it that way. They may have started as Jedi or as younglings or as Padawans. They are not Jedi in the least.
yeah, they're again that infighting and the lack of clear direction or pecking order, even. Uh, a lot of that's because the Grand Inquisitor's out of the equation right now, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, we're back to Obi-Wan and Leia kind of bickering with one another.
just west of L.A. in the mountains where they film MASH. Um, However, I will say is so far 3 episodes in, I haven't had a moment where, like I did in Book of Boba Fett, where it's like, all right, they didn't have any budget left for this episode. Everything is looking very good.
It's interesting that some people have criticized the show on that level,
Really.
and it's because, oh well, I can tell there's only one or two practical elements, and they're in a tiny little room. And it's like, I guess if you really are training your brain to look for things like that, that you're going to see them. Um, but I don't have that experience.
No, I
No,
I don't. It looks beautiful to me.
what I like about it is that you're getting a juxtaposition of the various worlds. I mean, this week that's completely different from last week's. And actually, even though the world, the mining town that we're in on right now is very much barren, it's not a desert like Tatooine. It's a different level of barren because Tatooine was a natural desert. This is the effects of the Empire. By the way, did you recognize that was Seth Rogen talking to them as the Weasel?
No, that's not Seth Rogen.
Correct?
That's somebody
Is that?
else. No, it's
Oh, it's
And it's Zach Braff.
yes.
Zach Braff. Zach Braff. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. By the way, did you have a pause when you saw that flag?
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
Confederate flag on the back or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really calls to mind that and really makes you think, okay, yeah, no, this guy's no good. But
Mm.
I saw somebody call him, oh, how about this bootlicker? That's how they referred to him. And then they were
Well,
talking about how he's just like such a powerful villain because that's how evil can flourish is these kinds of individuals who aren't actually doing the bad thing
well,
themselves
let me let me
but
let me put
going
it to you.
along with it.
You're totally right. Let me put it to you this way, though. It's like, again, having been in a school system, it's like you have let's say you have a principal who was not a big disciplinarian and kids got away with a lot of stuff. And you're frustrated as a teacher because, dress code wasn't, followed and, stuff like this. And then you get a new principal and right away they're like, laying down the law. And everybody's like, yes, this is great. And it's great for about the first year until they start laying down more laws and then more laws the year after that. And then sooner or later, this principal becomes more of a, dictator. So this guy, the truck driver, whatever his name is, he's probably liking it because there's actually some law and order. But we're not to the point where the empire is, now totally exploiting that.
Well, and in part, much because Dave's the way it's very right. It's this is the banality of evil. It's the don't make waves, don't get in the way, don't question things, and nothing bad's gonna happen to you. And if anything, things will be easier for you in some ways. So all he has to do is, because it's interesting. He starts asking them the moment they get in the truck, well, where did you guys say you're from again? And what are your names? He's checking the story.
I like how the stormtroopers actually pay attention and are like good investigators here. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, we've got a female stormtrooper in this episode, which
Yeah.
I mean makes sense. They kind of set that up in the Bad Batch that there were, um, but I like this. You called her Leia, and then now we get one of the best moments in this episode. I think is when Obi-Wan's saying, Leia was his mother's name, her mother's name. I get confused.
Mhm.
And he said, sometimes when I look at Luma, he said, I see her mother's face. And he was telling the truth right here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, apparently there's a point of controversy here. Dave,
Oh gosh.
we want to go on that tangent just a little bit right now?
Yeah, this is probably as good a time as any because Leia begins to ask him about her parentage a little bit on her father specifically. And Obi-Wan kind of makes the comment like, um, uh, I'd love to have been your father, but that's just not the
Well, first
case.
of all, let's say that this is really kind of cool that Leia says actually she thinks Ben is her father.
Yeah.
Because and this is getting now they've kind of retconned. They figured out how to make that line from Return of the Jedi of how Leia remembers her mother. I mean, Ben was there, when she was born. So, feasibly, we should have memories of when we were born. We don't, none of us do, but she, through the Force, does. So she remembers what her mother looks like. And she's probably looking at Ben saying, I recognize you. Are you my father? Anyway, keep on going.
No, that's an interesting point. And that could work in reverse as well, which is that she may see um, a motherly figure over the course of this who she might mistake for her mother in the same way. But yeah, so the controversy, like somebody came out and said, oh well, I hate that line, the where he says like, oh, I'd love to have been your father, but that's just not the case. As him having a thing for Padme. And I hate that. I hate that. It's terrible. It undoes all this stuff. Which no, it doesn't it doesn't undo anything. It doesn't make it the writers bad at their jobs. I think it's a kind of a it's a fun thing to leave open to interpretation that your mind could go there.
Your mind could go there if you
Your
hadn't
mind
if you had not have watched every other bit of Star Wars. I think it's a gross misinterpretation because there is nothing in the Clone Wars, there is nothing in Revenge in any of the prequels except for Anakin, saying,
Anakin's jealousy
Anakin's
at the
jealousy
end.
in that
Yeah.
in that one like 2 second instance, and
Yeah.
so there is no evidence to the to the to that at all. And so them putting that in there and people freaking out saying Eric confirms that he had a thing for Padme. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's actually what it is he's showing empathy to a kid. It's
Yeah.
like, again, I said in our private conversations today that, how many times as a teacher did I look at my students and think, God, I wish I was your father, but I'm not, because your parents are awful. Your parents are, or you've had a crappy life and I wish you were my kid so I could, give you a better life. But that's not the case. That doesn't mean that I had a thing for one of their parents.
Yeah, and in reality, I mean, not only is he showing empathy to a kid that's been, I mean, let's just think about Leia's last few days. She has been kidnapped from the only home she's known, had her life threatened, had to go on the run, and now she's in the middle of a firefight between the Empire's enforcers and somebody she didn't know who she has no idea who she is, but she's having to trust. So the idea that Ben is showing compassion and empathy at that moment, it's exactly what any adult would, no, right thinking adult would do. And then you add on top of that the relationship in general that Obi-Wan had to her father and her mother, meaning the fact that he knew them, the fact that he was friends with them, the fact that he saw them at their best, and then he saw them when their relationship collapsed. And again, and the guilt that he feels for his part in it.
Now, real quick, talking to a friend about, because we just went through the gate here. And this is one of the things that really upset one of my friends when we were talking this weekend about this. That he's loving the show, but then there are elements where the writing does get kind of lazy and it's like, why did you do that? For example, this fence. Now it's kind of funny because Obi-Wan actually goes over, he's the first person in Star Wars to actually go over and try to use the controls to turn the fence off, and it doesn't work, so he blasts it and then the door opens, right? um,
Mm-hmm.
but what upset my friend was that, why did he even do that? Why didn't they just walk around it?
Well,
So you
he
you
wanted to.
no, you show this they show, and I understand his point a little bit. You show this wide shot that it's just like, all you have to do is walk up the hill about 2 feet and go around the fence and come down, but instead they have to have this whole thing. Anyway, it's
Well,
nothing to get
can I
super.
explain? No, but can I explain something to you? So, if you ever on the road from McAllen, Texas to Corpus Christi, there is an immigration checkpoint along that route. Now, if you look to the left and to the right of that checkpoint of that highway, all you'll see is flat Texas desert. So you're like, well, why don't people go around? They do. You'll see trucks in the middle of the night pull up to the side. People jump off and run into the desert, but they have that checkpoint specifically to stop people and ask questions, much in the same way that the stormtroopers here
I
were.
I
They're there to keep the presence of
I
the empire there.
I get that,
Now,
but their stormtroopers are all dead. They don't have to blow the gate. They can just walk around it at that point. Anyway, we don't have to go back and forth about this one. Now
yeah,
we've got a new character that has come in. We have an Imperial officer who is not an Imperial officer, or was, and
might be. Well,
Double
what's
agent.
interesting, yeah. Yeah, well, again, I mean, we're talking now. We're 10 years into the empire. A lot of a lot of these people were formerly Republic officers. So there's not guarantee that all of them signed up for what the empire eventually became. You know, so the idea that some of them may be helping on an underground railroad type uh, system for Jedi and other Force users, it's not unfeasible.
And honestly, this is where it gets. There's some really cool things that are going to go down here because we do find out um, that it is like you said, and I first of all I have to pause because everybody's calling it an underground railroad, and I think that
Mhm.
is really diminishing what the underground railroad was. That has actually
It
kind of been
is.
bothering me, but I don't know how else to, compare it. We're shuttling, Jedi and Force sensitive people to safety, without the authorities finding out. Um, but there's a lot of apparently when they go into this little room. There's apparently a lot of cool Easter eggs in there. For example, carved in Arabic. Apparently, Doom is written in there. So Caleb Doom, Kanan Jarrus, oh, by the way, you get to vote on the new Savvy's Workshop Legacy lightsabers, and Kanan Jarrus is one of them. We talked about that, so
Mhm.
can make your vote. Anyway, um, but we find out that Quinlan Voss is
right?
um, is helping traffic, the
Or
Jedi.
at least went through here.
Well, she says that he helps from time to time, and it's
Mhm.
kind of interesting that a lot of people are wondering: Are we going to see Quinlan Voss in this? Um,
Well, that was the presumption that some people started making regarding O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's kid.
yeah.
And I
Um,
call him kid. He's a grown adult, but yeah.
to
Where
to our
would the uninitiated know Quinlan Voss from?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Quinlan Voss, you're going to need to read a book called The Dark Disciple. You're going to have to watch Clone Wars. I just watched the episode of Clone Wars where he and Obi-Wan go chasing after Cad Bane. Pardon me, choking on Guinness. He is kind of a rebellious Jedi. He's kind of a rogue Jedi. He's not. He's kind of the opposite of Obi-Wan, actually. I mean, um, he's very he has a power. His ability in the Force is very similar to what Rey had when she touched the lightsaber and she could see the moments that were attached to that object. So
Mhm.
he can do that. He can touch an object and find out who has been dealing with it and whatever. Um, but yeah, it's kind of a cool Jedi. He's kind of the anti Jedi, really.
He's like the most Han Solo of Jedi's, I think. Because he's not that he's not a Jedi. It's just he sees the strict doctrines of the Jedi Code as more guidelines, more suggestions than straight up orders that he must all follow.
So it's a fun cut for folks who are familiar with the character.
Which yeah, which interesting as you say. I mean, given the journey that Obi-Wan is in, it might be an interesting juxtaposition to have Quinlan be the one who kind of
Well,
helps God put him back on the path towards being the Jedi he was.
what if, ladies and gentlemen, let's connect everything. What if Quinlan Voss was the one who got Grogu out of the Jedi Temple and had to go through this safe house at some point to get him to wherever he was? So could
There's a
be,
possibility.
could be. Um,
So this loading droid, this big loader droid guy, I don't know if he has a designation that's been revealed yet, but
Ned 08, Ned 8, I think it is something like that.
the strong silent type,
yeah.
uh, he's going to figure prominently later on, and I didn't want to just gloss over him because we tend to do that. We overlook the droids at times.
By the way, I love this.
I think I've heard that there people are thinking that he's going to be voiced by O'Shea Jackson Jr.
Could
Um,
also be.
because they make a big point about how they don't speak, and Leia's like, well, what if he has something to say? I think he's going to get a voice, but we've only got 3 episodes to get him a voice. Um,
By the way, I love that little moment between Leia and Tala where Leia's just looking at her and asking, "Is it scary?" The journey that they're going to go on, and she kind of connects with her again, showing once again that ability that Leia has through the Force, really, to connect with people on an emotional level, to see them for who they are, and kind of find a way to bridge that gap between them.
Well, and also the moment here between Ben and her, he's learning from. He says, "Why do you do this? Why do you risk everything?" And she said, "Because it's so." He's that what seeing somebody who is sacrificing everything and putting everything on the line, and he was turning down bail, an episode ago, saying no, it's too dangerous, I can't. So I think he's learning a lesson here.
Mm-hmm.
But now we are starting to get a connection. Um, he's feeling a disturbance in the force because somebody's on planet.
Group of somebodies,
Well,
but one somebody in
one somebody in
particular.
particular. Yeah, we got some Inquisitors. Um, by the way, I like the cinematography in this, and when it's dark and Vader's lit up and the Inquisitors are lit up, it looks really cool. They did a good job because they're all dressed in black, so it has to look. But anyway, here comes Darth Vader, and
Which, by the way, is this the canonical first moment that Obi-Wan sees Darth Vader for the first time in this outfit?
I would guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So there wasn't a moment where we saw like a hollow vid or something showing Darth Vader. This is
Now,
the moment when he dawns on him. Oh crud, this is Anakin now.
I wonder, as a member of the 501st, if anything is going to change now, because you have, like, when we go trooping and the guy dresses Darth Vader, little kids will come up and get a big hug and, like, oh, yay, it's Darth Vader. We love this. This actually took me by kind of surprise how they introduced. He's coming into town a whomping and a whooping. I mean, and I love it when he stops because he's made that connection with Obi-Wan, but he's force choking people, he's snapping necks, he's dragging them through the. What do you guys think of this portrayal of Vader? It's actually taking Rogue One and I think amplifying it.
I
It's
agree.
connect yeah, it's connecting the character. I mean, there's a reason he's the biggest villain in movie history. And for a lot of people, sometimes that bite has kind of gone out of him just because,
Well,
you got to see his journey or whatever. You need these moments to kind of remind people, no, 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 no. He is, there's a reason everybody fears him.
let me ask Dave as the parent here. Too far?
I mean, it remains to be seen. I don't know if George himself would have gone this far. He certainly would have run it up the flagpole with some folks to
I mean,
try to figure that out.
let's
But
be honest though, and in episode 4, we had some force choking and cracking of
Mhm.
necks. I mean, he broke a guy's neck on a rebel trooper's neck. And Empire Strikes
But
Back, he was killing Imperial officers. But this is kind of different when you see the person's neck just go, and it's like, wow.
oh yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it
we
goes
did hear him
from
crush. Yeah, we did hear him crush Captain Antilles' windpipe and neck, but this is different because that was a character that was in direct opposition. We've for the most part we've seen him be
That's
brutal
true.
against rebels or underlings. This is different because this is bystanders. These are people who are not in his way, have nothing they could do to him, have no business being involved in any of this, and he is just towing them and using them and brutalizing them because he wants to draw out Obi-Wan.
And Obi-Wan's instinct is to run.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
he understands that he has to survive, and he also knows that I'm out of Jedi shape, But
Mhm.
oh my goodness, when Vader lights up the lightsaber, oh my gosh,
I, yeah, and I love the moment when Obi-Wan kind of takes off and the look, the way the camera just lingers on Vader's helmet just for a moment, kind of like either he's thinking to himself interesting, or he's thinking to himself some curse words about how soft he's gotten and how weak he is, and he can't he can't believe that this is what's happened to him,
hi
to
Lucy.
Obi.
The it yeah, I mean, like, he's spooked as heck, and the way that this is all shot and the way that it's acted, um I mean, that's
Horror movie.
genuine. Yeah, it's a horror movie, and he's genuinely scared, and then you get to see that fear become more justified the further into this we go, um, where he gets downright tortured, um, and it's a lot. It's really a lot emotionally, and you feel a real sense of peril for him, even though he has to survive. The story has to go a certain way. Um, it's still like visceral. Like I had a visceral response to this. It was like I'm uncomfortable. I'm I'm a little frightened. It's like my let alone my son who is like threatening to sprint out of the room because it's like, oh gosh, this is too much. It's like I'm kind of with you there. It's
I
a
In a
like
lot.
way,
the sorry, I like the line, "What have you become?" He said, "I am what you made me." I mean, they made this personal quick,
mhm.
and I've really not a lot of words are spoken between the two of them so far, but we'll get some more here in a bit. Um, but
But what
Vader,
what I
to your
find,
point, when you said we're in a horror movie, Vader is a lot like Mike Myers, Jason
Jason
Voorhees.
Voorhees, yeah,
I mean, it's you know
you can't escape him. You cannot escape him. He pops out of nowhere. He is one with the shadows, and he can come anywhere and attack you from anywhere. And
now my
all you try to do is survive him.
my interest would be like, what if a person this was the first introduction to Darth Vader that they got? We all got the introduction to Darth Vader in the '70s, and so this doesn't scare us as much. But if this was the first time you saw Vader, you might be a little bit more scared. Um,
Mhm.
Okay, so two quick things about the saber fight, right? One thing, Vader's using one hand. He's toying with him, right?
it's
Mhm.
just
This
like
is
an Empire, yeah.
very much like what he's doing with Luke in Empire. And I think we in our group chat we meant one of us mentioned that, which was just like, man, how messed up was it that they sent Luke to go face Vader after Obi-Wan experienced this himself in a fight with Vader. So it's like, yeah, no, like that touche, right?
Well,
Um,
Yeah.
again, I'm still going to say take issue with that in that they didn't just send Luke off to fight Vader in Empire. They actually tried. Yoda and Ben tried to keep him on Dagobah, saying, "No, you're going to get your butt kicked if you go. Only a
Yeah.
fully trained Jedi can take him on." So Luke gave him the double bird and got in the X-wing, and off he went, and got his butt whooped. So that ain't on Ben. And by the time Return of the Jedi rolls around, then it's like, well, we don't have anything else, so it is what it
But that's
is.
it for
Go
now.
fight him.
But I think in Jedi, Luke understood. I think the reality is he had no idea just how much he was going to take on in Empire. He thought, well,
Well, heaven
I've
forbid we
survived the
listen to
odds. I
the
can make.
experts, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, but exactly. Uh, but
But
also, I mean, that's maybe they should have. As a teacher, Aaron, if there's a way to make that lesson stick into the students' head of, you may not be ready for this just yet. There might be some ways you could pass it along. That just, yeah, you might not be ready for this.
so there's a
Uh,
second little flourish in the fight itself um, that towards the end there, Anakin's swinging the saber like a club, like just like with like full on anger. It looks like, and which again mirrors Luke doing the
yeah.
same thing to Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi. And so like that's another nice
yeah.
kind of callback in a way. It's like just like I'm just gonna friggin' try to cut you down with this thing with raw brutal strength.
So,
Just
so can I get us to let's shift away? I mean, we're gonna. There's still more of the fight going on, and Vader's he's wanting to give Obi-Wan a taste of his own medicine. He's going to start burning him. So let's let
Mm-hmm.
that play. There's nothing really. I mean, that's pretty cool. But let's talk about Reva a little bit here. Um, when she finds the pathway and she sees the Jedi symbol, she gets visibly angry. And we were talking about this in our chat. I said, it's like her first monologue in the first episode is telling everybody the Jedi don't care about you. they're not going to stick up for you. They're going to run away. You're going to be left. It's like they don't give a junk about you. She's
Hmm.
mad at the Jedi. And if she is that youngling in the very first scene, you know, what do we think is going on? Because it's not like, aha, I found your path. She sees this path and she gets mad. Is it to
Yeah,
me? It's
yeah,
like,
no, it
where was my Jedi saving me? Why didn't anybody take me through this path? Why didn't why was I left behind? And
which is
no, go ahead. I'm
well,
just
no,
wondering about Riva.
I was gonna no, because I was gonna make the comparison to the second sister that you meet in Jedi Fallen Order, because her path is much similar the same way. Her biggest rage is against her Jedi master, who betrayed and sold her out to the Inquisitors. So that in many instances, the anger that the Inquisitors feel whenever it's shown, it's not towards the dark side in a weird way. It's not towards their fellow Inquisitors. It's towards the Jedi. It's almost like you failed me, and I didn't have enough strength to be able to survive this,
let's
except doing what I'm doing now.
let's also remember what happens in Revenge of the Sith. I mean, and again, I don't want to diminish the stuff that's going on with Vader and Obi-Wan, but none of this is like surprising. This is all really cool. But um, what happened in Revenge of the Sith is that Obi-Wan and Yoda get into the temple and they send a message out saying nobody come back. Everybody just go hide. Now, all the little kids that are running around and maybe hiding from clone troopers in the temple and stuff like that. Maybe Riva is one of them. It's, maybe they see this message like, okay, good. All the grown-ups are saving themselves and you know, we're left to the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and when you're talking about your poster, Fredo, Riva's eye is on Obi-Wan, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't she focused
No,
on
it's a
Obi-Wan?
no. She's focused on Vader, I believe.
Right.
So,
She's focused on.
So
So
yeah,
it's not
she's
Obi Wan that she's after.
most of the people's like focus was on like their enemy, and her focus was on Vader.
so
And so
maybe she saw Anakin slaughtering everybody, and it just he's the reason for her lot in life.
it's a possibility. It's also strictly it could be ambition based, like I want to be the, most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy and I have to, eventually topple Vader to be that person. So it could be just raw ambition, but I'm with you. I think it's personal. Um, I think the reason that she knows who Anakin is because she did have a past with Anakin of some kind prior to his change.
Or
Um,
he slaughtered three of the kids that she was with, as or watching him slaughter younglings and other Jedi during Order
mhm.
66.
Right. I mean, that would be enough to do it, right? You put two and two together eventually. That like, yeah, this guy who's at the right hand of Sidious is the same guy. Or, we even saw in the movie where he calls him Lord Vader. Like,
Well,
doesn't stretch credibility to have somebody sitting in the room, like hearing him be called Lord Vader in that moment
there might
and
be a
know it.
little Ahsoka, link here where it's like, maybe Riva, we talked about this, maybe Riva was supposed to be Anakin's Padawan and then,
Yeah, that was
didn't.
my theory, but I don't
Maybe
know.
Ahsoka was shoved on. I don't know. Who knows how all that works, but she's mad. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she's just not an evil mustache twirling inquisitor. She's it's personal.
Yeah, this isn't like it is for the
This is
fourth
Rocky versus the
sister of the.
Russian type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. The other for the other Inquisitors, it's a job. It's a way to continue doing
Right.
what they want to keep doing. This isn't that. This isn't personal in the way. It's a connection to Riva. There's something to Riva between herself and Anakin Obi-Wan that hasn't been revealed yet, but clearly is playing into both her drives and her emotional reaction to what she's seeing. By
Now,
the way, one thing I wanted to mention, very quick before we move on, is the moment where uh, Vader's burning Obi Wan is like your pain has just begun, and I'm just like thinking that's really the stick that this horror movie's holding over us or threatening us with. It's not death. It's to the pain.
Right.
It's
How many?
how much mental, emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual pain can we put
How many? How
these
many movie
characters through?
references is Fredo going to make in this podcast today? We've had Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Now we've had the Princess Bride.
I'll
Um,
hand it to you on the Princess Bride though, because like when Obi-Wan like runs away from the duel, it's very much like Count Ruben like
right.
running away from Inigo Montoya when
Um,
he gives him his speech. So
so okay. So some things that are kind of drive me bonkers that I wish people would not get so hung up on the fact that Alec Guinness looked old and had gray hair, and Ewan McGregor doesn't, and we're only whatever it is 5 years from Rebels. So people are thinking that okay now maybe this being burned, maybe that explains how he now looks so old later. It's like I know people who were full head of hair, and then like a year later bald, or full hair is just colored natural color, and then like 5 years later it's ghost white. I mean, it's like things happen. I don't know why we're so hung up on those types of things. I don't know. It bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, it's an aesthetic question, which honestly, I mean, everybody's done the math. The math has been shared multiple times. How Ewan McGregor is and Alec Guinness are in the same bracket in terms of distance from where Obi-Wan's happening to when A New Hope is happening. So it doesn't extend credulity to say that this Obi-Wan and the Obi-Wan will meet in episode 4 the same character. Um,
Were you also
Particularly because it's not the if you're gonna be it seems pedantic to be or nitpicky to be worried about that because realistically that's not the point of the story.
By
You
the
know,
way, some other things that upset the friend of mine that I was talking to, and this has happened in other episodes as well. It's like, and he's talking again about some of the lazy writing. It's kind of like when the Jedi was running away from the Inquisitors in Episode 1, and he gets away because the awning comes down, and the Inquisitors are like, "Oh no, I can't go around the awning and go chase after you." And like here, okay, so the she shoots and ignites the stuff again, and all of a sudden there's like a wall of fire, and Vader's like, oh well, okay, I guess we're done. And so there are those things that are weighing on people. um you know could they have written a little bit more like, okay, I believe that that's how they got away, not just, oh no, there's a log in front of me, however will I get them. um but were you surprised that we got Vader versus Obi-Wan so soon?
well, can I address the point that you were just making
Please do.
briefly? There's a really good thread on the Twitter, and I'll make sure that I share it. I've already retweeted it, but I'll make sure I'll share it again. From Brian Young, who's been involved with the Full of Sith podcast for a number of years, and he talks about specifically the scene in Last Jedi, the throne room scene, and what makes that scene so powerful and so effective, despite what you were alluding to, all the pedantic arguments that people make about the choreography in that scene, now that they've freeze framed it and they've like pointed out the little, like this guy's doing nothing over here and this other person is not swinging his weapon in the correct way, and he said, like, look, the point of the scene is not the choreography. The point of the scene is the emotion and the story. And like, are you serving the story? Are you hitting the emotional beats that you need to? And if you're doing those things, the scene can work regardless of some of the little, details that might drive a person nuts, and so like, thinking about that, like in terms of like Obi-Wan's getaway here at the end. Oh well, Vader could have just blown out the fire and gone and gotten him. um it's like, well, they're giving the audience us a breather. First of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, if you want to explain it in some universe way, you can say, well, he wanted Obi-Wan to suffer and wanted him to get away so he could prolong his
Well,
suffering.
it's
You
also
know,
kind of like in
um,
Empire Strikes Back when the Millennium Falcon, gets away. Vader's just like, all right, um,
right.
you
And
know.
so, again, the reasons that some of this stuff doesn't really matter.
Well, and
And
I want to also, our mantra here is also always about expectations. And I want to just, it's kind of like, it seems like a lot of people want this and every Star Wars thing to be absolutely perfect. It's like you finally get tickets to go see your favorite band, and if they don't play one song, the concert is ruined for you.
yeah.
It's like they didn't play this song. The whole night is ruined. It's like you just sat through 2.5 hours of your favorite band playing all these things, and they didn't play this one song, and that's ruining your night. And so it's like we just have, all this. We've now had what, about an hour and a half of Obi-Wan,
Yeah,
and you're upset
halfway
that he
through.
didn't walk around the fence. With all due respect to my friend, um, I see his point. It is like, could you have spent just 10 more minutes and wrote something that works a little bit? But it's like, is that really going to make you upset? And
Well, it's going to enhance your enjoyment of the story being told if Obi-Wan goes around the fence and spends 10 minutes running away from stormtroopers in the desert to then end up getting captured so that Tala can save him. Or do you just shoot it, go through 30 seconds, you're at the same spot?
by the way,
Uh,
we didn't
don't
we
get me
didn't
wrong,
talk about
it's
the stormtrooper
storytelling.
getting sliced in half. But anyway, that's
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
that was pretty cool.
that's
By the way,
pretty
But
cool.
by the way, what are the odds that you'll see that costume at next year's celebration?
oh gosh. A, s- a stormtrooper cut in half. That's the next
I'm just saying.
cosplay. Yeah.
But the,
Oh,
but to get to your point, Aaron, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one about expectations, but it's also a question of the purpose of the story is to, we're watching a story about Obi-Wan 10 years later reconnecting. That's why you're right in that I don't think everybody expected to get Vader so soon, but I think it works so well because Obi-Wan's story is intertwined with Anakin's, and the only character who's going to bring him this low was going to be Vader. So you, in a sense, afterwards you're like, yeah, it makes sense that the only character who's going to be able to bring, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi to the dark night of his soul, so to speak, the bottom element of the story was Vader, and you needed to have him.
So let me ask you guys this: we're 3 episodes in. We've got 3 left.
mhm. Yeah.
Leia has now been captured a second time, and so we've got to go find her again and bring her to safety.
Hmm.
Have we seen all we're going to see of Luke Skywalker, and that's of him playing
Yeah.
Vroom Vroom
Or Owen.
or Owen? Have
I
we?
think Baru was cast in this
She is
though.
Bonnie Piece,
Yeah,
but
so I
but
do think we're going to return to the homestead, maybe at the very end. But um,
this
to
is
get back
all
to your
about.
other question about seeing the lightsaber fight happen this early, I'm not sure it's the last time we'll see them cross
No,
sabers
I
in
don't
this
think so
series.
either.
And strictly because you cannot emasculate Obi-Wan like this and then just be like, okay, we're done, we're all done here. He has to get his mojo back.
I think he's going to have a moment like Rey had in The Rise of Skywalker, where I think when Qui-Gon finally connects with him is
Hmm.
going to be when he needs him most, and he's going to have that Popeye eating a spinach type of a moment.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I also think Riva is probably going to go the route of Ben Solo a little bit. Of she's going to have a redemption of some sort. That's my guess. Um, and
So
but like I said, I think that's probably how he's going to get his mojo back. I think that's how we're also going to get Qui-Gon. So
because when you consider it, I mean, we know that Leia will return to Bail. to continue on her life in Alderaan, becoming the senator. We know that, and here's the thing: if Vader suspected at any point whatsoever that Bail Organa or Leia, his daughter, was the key to getting Kenobi, they would not have been allowed to be together. So we know that in some ways, where they're going to end up back again. So maybe that explains why Reva's not around anymore. Maybe something happens to her. But also, just from a standpoint, kind of like regarding to Dave saying about Obi-Wan getting his mojo back, just think of the character as we meet him just 5 years later in Rebels, or maybe that's not 5, well, yeah, 5 or so years later, and then right before you get to the character in Episode 4. The way that Ben Kenobi is portrayed by Alec Guinness, he's a far more mature, assured, centered, and just at peace with himself kind of character. I mean, the guy who cuts off what's his name? What is it, Ponda Babas or Doctor?
Ponda Baba's
Whose
arm.
arm does it cut? Yeah, yeah. We cut Ponda Baba's arms in the cantina. The guy standing with the lightsaber drawn and just staring everybody down. That's not this guy right now. So we know he's going to have to get to a point where he can feel like not only he can do that, but do it and feel and look at everybody and go like, and who wants next?
But here's, here we, like I say, here we are. We got 3 episodes left. I don't feel like we've had any filler.
Right.
I do. We've already had a big. I like how we have the one lightsaber battle so far in the 3rd episode, because I don't feel right now like I have in some of the previous Marvel shows and some of the previous Star Wars stuff, where it's like, okay, we're going to have to hurry up and cram everything into the last episode. Except for the fact that it's like, my expectations for this is I want to see him communing with Qui-Gon. I was actually expecting a little bit of Yoda, because, I mean, how else are they're probably going to have to connect and talk to each other through the Force.
I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't happen in the very next episode, if it were just as a way for him to get himself right.
That could be.
And
as
just
healing.
Connecting with Yoda, because Yoda's always been a source of strength for him.
Mm-hmm. And that's also where I think Quinlan Voss kind of comes into the picture. I mean, like I said, it's he almost needs to like be reconnected to that Jedi mojo. He needs to go back to the source. He needs to, he's lost his way. He needs to find it again. So whether or not, in some way he needs to get back on that path that we know he eventually ends back on. So I think I could see where this next episode coming out tomorrow is more uh passive. There's less action happening, there may be some chase or whatever, but it's more about Obi-Wan finally reconnecting with the Force
Well, and
and
that's the thing, is
embracing
that
that side.
he's gonna be laid up. He's hurt, so somebody's gonna
So
have to go find Leia.
Mm.
In
maybe
steps
not.
somebody.
Maybe she ends up once again as bait, and the episode ends, with him finally connecting. We'll see. It's gonna be interesting because I could see where this episode coming up is one where a lot of fans are arguing. It's like, oh, I can't believe they went back, and this wasn't as good as last week's. Because yeah, this is the next episode might be the vegetables to this week's candy.
So
It would be hard to envision Leia getting rescued quickly this time around. Because there is a lot more that has to occur for Obi-Wan to get to the point of being able to even defeat Reva at this point.
Yeah.
And Reva and Leia are going to be joined at the hip, I'm assuming, for the next little bit.
And could it be Reva? I mean, I'm sorry, could it be Leia who starts unraveling the mystery of Reva? She's shown that ability to connect with people and see through their masks and see who they are.
There was the meme that I think Fredo shared, or somebody shared in our group, and then Dave said y'all are forgot that we shared this already. It was Star Wars fans versus Star Wars fans versus Star Wars fans. Like two sets of Star Wars fans are fighting while a third set is sitting there watching and eating popcorn. I think it would be an interesting study that somebody right now should be paying attention to how people are getting upset, or just what fires them up about this Obi-Wan series. And then when the next series comes out that is outside of, it's brand new. Let's take the Acolyte, for example. When that launches, what is the fan reaction to that? Because again, I think there's a lot of emotional baggage that is going into this. Like I said earlier, it's like it has to be perfect, otherwise it's not going to be good. I think that's where a lot of people are sitting, at least the people who are upset about it, except for the racists.
Well, yeah, that's the whole different category that
Yeah.
you can just sort of like, put in its own box and hopefully send out into an ocean somewhere so we never have to see it again. But the people who are like not connecting, totally get it, totally respect it. But again, like I feel like you're onto something, Aaron. Like it's like what are you bringing into this that is not allowing you to connect with this material, because these are well established fan favorite characters going through a journey. There is a story here. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, um, and classic hero's journey stuff, classic Star Wars tropes. We're getting the laser fights and laser swords, and um, I don't see any sort of failing here so far. Um, and and so like again, I would ask, oh well, is it that Star Wars has changed,
No.
or is it have you changed?
However, I mean, again, I understand my friend's point because it's kind of like when I did, I'm going to use that band analogy again. I went and saw a band one time, and it was like pretty good concert, but then all of a sudden they were like the guitar player played the wrong chord. Then it happened, and like the singer hit a wrong note. It's like stuff that they've been doing for 30 some years, and it's so those things, when even though it's like only one missed chord out of how many chords in the entire, set, it grates at you. And so when you do have the budget that they're dealing with and stuff like that, it's like, I can see their point where it's like maybe pay a little bit more attention of, have somebody in the room that's going to say, why don't they just walk around the gate? Why are we doing this? That's going to tick off the net nerds. And it's like, well, maybe they don't care about ticking off the net nerds, but it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's just not, believable, or that's just not clean. Let's spend a little bit more time and find those things that do just not sit well. But again, I don't know what their budget and time constraints and stuff like this, and there was rewrites and things like that. So maybe it was like, we just got to get them to point A to point B. Who cares? That could be. But those little things, even this, maybe I'm going to put air quotes again, because with all due respect to my friend, I do get their point. But as stupid as it might be to get upset that they didn't walk around a gate, it does grate on you. And then it does, like I said, one missed note can just make you feel like it was a horrible performance.
I don't know, and I guess the only thing I'd say is the hardest part, and this is why the point about the acolyte's so key. The hardest part is when there's an expectation, and it's surprising that the pieces of Star Wars media that we've connected, or that the audience, the fans have connected with the most, have been the ones with the fewest level of expectations. The Mandalorian being foremost among them, because there was nothing. It was a whole new character, whole new time, a piece of the timeline. We had no idea what the story was going to be. We had some suggestions or some expectations, but nobody saw Baby Yoda, aka Grogu, coming along. So up until that point, that didn't exist in our mind. So I always think it's easier to tell the new story than it is to kind of go back. But this is also the problem: is Star Wars right now, as it's being developed, is doing a lot of let's go back and bring this back in here. Let's bring in Ahsoka and those characters from Rebels. Let's bring in these other characters from over here. So we're gonna keep having this issue about expectations with the audience, with the fan base, because everybody builds their head canon, and it's very hard to break out of that.
And the pedanticness of those details sometimes. Again, we were just talking about this. It's like that's not the point of the scene.
All right, so let's just kind of wrap up our thoughts. Dave's alarm has gone off a while ago. Just how do we feel about where we're sitting after 3 episodes? Where we think we're going to go? Just very quickly, Fredo, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, I'm liking where we're at so far. It tracks with the story. It's got a nice flow. I'll be interested to see. I think, this next episode's going to be a bit of a pause in some ways for Obi-Wan. He's going to have to get healed up, reconnect with the Force. We might see it might be the episodes that begins to set everything up for the finale, which will be 5 and 6. So I could see where a lot of people may not like this next episode this week, but then they'll see why it's important in the next two.
Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not gonna I'm gonna try not to go in with expectations to our point that we always make. But I really like what we've seen so far. eh, Obi-Wan getting punished in this sort of manner is, I think, very much in character, in universe. Everything tracks. Um, but you eventually have to have some sort of redemptive arc for the man. And I guess I would be disappointed if they didn't give him a little bit of his swerve back this season, um, and just left it on some kind of cliffhanger where, he fails miserably and the universe is askew. Because like that would be the dead giveaway that season 2 is coming. Um, I guess that would be fine, but I don't know. A year is a long ways to wait to try to see Obi-Wan. One of my very favorite characters, by the way,
See, and I'm
begin to get his swerve back. I want to see some of that.
I'm actually kind of hoping that they don't do a season 2. I said in our chat, I said that's how Caddyshack 2 gets made. Because there's only, it's like I don't know, it's like how many more adventures can we go on? It'll just be kind of weird. I actually think that it's going to be this season and this is it. And I think you're right that it's going to be, because he was already low. And it's kind of like he just joined the Marine Corps, and trying to find himself. And what are the first, or the military, they break you down so they can build you back up. And I think, to Fredo's point, I think we are going to see some sort of, other Jedi come in and help to build him back up. And like you said, get his mojo back. That's got to happen quick, So far, like I said, I haven't felt like there's any dead time. I've enjoyed it. Yeah, that we'll see what happens. But I don't think, and I don't kind of hope that they don't do a second season.
No, because there'd be even further adventures of leaving Tatooine and leaving Luke behind will begin to stick out. It's like that's part of the element that's kind of always been
Yeah,
in the character as we know it.
it's a fine line between being a team player and negligent. So anyway, with that, we'll see what happens with tomorrow's episode. Let us know what you're thinking of Obi-Wan so far on Twitter or on Facebook. Hit us up. Like I said, we like to be bothered. But until then, we will say who dat.
Who dat?
Who dat?
Everybody have a great week.
McConkey.